Talking with Matt Simon from New Hampshire Common Sense, who's been on Free Minds TV talking about reform of marijuana laws in the state of New Hampshire and how to get some of the more draconian laws here off the books so that New Hampshire can be looked at in really how it should be.
Yes, we started in January, New Hampshire Common Sense, trying to affect state and local marijuana policy issues in the state, and we supported a decriminalization bill and supported the medical marijuana bill in the State House. Both of those have failed. And we got a message from state legislators that they're agreeing with our positions, but not willing to stand up to the federal government. And this is now, we've taken a hint that federal law is thought to supersede state law. That's, of course, a constitutional issue that people aren't going to agree on anytime soon, perhaps. But marijuana prohibition is a bad idea for New Hampshire. It's hurting us. It's hurting our communities and our towns, and it hurts everybody. It's expensive. We're wasting money. We have to stop it. And if we can't stop it in Concord, we're going to have to send a message to the federal government that they have to give New Hampshire the freedom to make its own decisions about policy. So we've launched now 2 new websites with that message in mind, reschedulecannabis.org and sendtherightmessage.com. And those 2 websites are designed to make the effective arguments against marijuana prohibition and energize people to take part in the process. And in New Hampshire, we have a special way to take part in that process. In our small state, we have, something like 20 presidential candidates now starting to swarm our state, and they all have very widely different views on prohibition, and those views are not being currently dealt with in the mainstream media. Some candidates are pure prohibitionists across the board, and others are very strongly anti-prohibitionists, and that isn't being discussed on television right now. I think that voters in Keene and New Hampshire and across the country would very much like to know what positions the next president is going to take on marijuana and drug policy reform issues, and we're hoping to raise those issues through our 2 new websites and our new project at NH Common Sense, and that's very much the plan.
Excellent. So what we've really seen is legislators afraid to legalize marijuana here or decriminalize it here in New Hampshire because they've seen the raids that go on in California with medical marijuana and the federal government really clamping down on states that want to really create their own laws.
We pride ourselves on living in a democracy in a constitutional republic where citizens are, supposed to have a great deal of say in the process of government, and there's supposed to be local and state governments making decisions. Instead, we've empowered an organization, an agency called the DEA, to make all of these decisions about drug policy for us and intimidate anybody who tries to do anything different. So we have a top-down bureaucratic organization that is apparently still answering to the ghost of Richard Nixon, determining our drug policies, and there needs to be an effective way to raise these issues, and it has to start on the local level with grassroots activism. That's what we're trying to do.
So these 2 websites, reschedulecannabis.org and sendtherightmessage.com, they're really aimed to get the marijuana back into the national level and the debate back into the national level, because what we've seen is that the drug war and the war on drugs has been widely ignored in recent history in the presidential debates and in the elections. During the 1990s, we really saw a huge theme in people caring about this issue, but lately it's presidential candidates don't really announce it and don't really bring it up. And the next president of the United States is going to preside on the 40th anniversary of the war on drugs, but they don't really address it as an issue anymore.
Right, and that's part of the logic of war and the rhetoric of war is that if you've got a war on something and it's not going well, you either have to escalate the war or you have to declare defeat and run away with your tail between your legs. Really, those are not the only 2 options. We're talking about policy here, and we need to find a more sound set of policies. And the 90s was the last time the drug war was really escalated. In the George Bush Senior administration faced the problem and did what George Bush had always wanted to do, which was escalate the drug war out of total whack, which it already was and had been before. But that was the last huge escalation, and 15 years later, it's obvious that hasn't worked, and people are waking up to that fact, but we're still intimidated and afraid to speak out on these issues. So for all the people out there who have thought, this marijuana prohibition is just a bad policy, it's not going to work, but I can't stand up against it. That's what this is about, is activism. It's getting people to stand up and say, it's enough is enough. The baby boomer generation, when I talk to those people, they say, yeah, we always just thought we'd grow up and legalize that stuff, and here we are, you know, here they are, and this is just, whether you're 15 or 85, it doesn't matter, it's a bad policy. It's time to stand up and educate yourself on the issue and talk about it around the dinner table and call your reps and write letters to the editor and do everything you can to promote this conversation.
So if people want to get involved and just learn more for themselves, I know I've been on these websites and they're not only get active about it, but it's also educate yourself, educate your family members, and then educate your legislators. So where can people go to do this one more time so that they can get there?
RescheduleCannabis.org is the more educational of the two websites. There are links to resources, an overview of some of the famous scholars who have argued against prohibition, plenty of links to other sites that have great information. And the other site is sendtherightmessage.com, and it has some educational materials as well, but it's more focused on activism.
Excellent. Matt Simon from New Hampshire Common Sense, it's great to have you on Free Minds TV. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Toby.